Welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast, coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm in a hotel room with my trusty podcast microphone. This week, we're going to be talking about the secret to connecting food supply chains and all sorts of other product supply chains using Starfish. So Starfish is a brand new company. It came out of the team that bought you IBM Food Trust. So some IBM alumni who have really in-depth experience in the world of traceability and supply chains, blockchain, GS1 standards, all these things that are basically the key to being compliant to food safety standards and to, if you are a retailer or a manufacturer or someone that sells software to those companies, if you're interested in end-to-end traceability, seeing all the way up the supply chain, all the way downstream, connecting customers with manufacturers, then it's relevant too. But probably the most pressing thing is those of you that are struggling with how am I going to share the data with the people that ship me things or the people I ship things to. It's a nightmare and it's super complicated, and Starfish makes it simple. And Wiggs Civitillo is the CEO and co-founder of Starfish, and we've got him here to explain how it all works. Wiggs, welcome back to the Mr. Beacon podcast. Things have changed a bit since we last saw each other.
They have indeed. Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve.
Well, I mean, you've gone from working for one of the most established, biggest, oldest companies in the world to one of the youngest. And I think what you're doing with Starfish is going to turn you into a big company, a really big company, actually. But it's definitely at the opposite end of the spectrum from the hundreds of thousands of people that were your colleagues. Tell us about Starfish and what made you leave this amazing institution in high tech and decide to jump in with both feet and do your own thing.
Yeah, it's a difficult decision to leave such an incredible company and leave such a group of people that I really loved and always, supported me and worked really well with. I think IBM is an incredible company, and I'm really pleased to say that even having left, I've still maintained so many good connections and so many good friendships. But still leaving is taking a leap of faith, and especially starting a new business is a very big leap of faith that you really have to be confident in. And so my story, and I'll recap the very short version, but I've been in the software world for about 13 years, building different types of software products, and I was in the financial space for a while. The past 6.5 years, I was at IBM, where I had the opportunity to build a number of incredible software products within IBM's software division, including all different types of software for supply chains. So we did fulfillment services, we did procurement services, we did inventory optimization, even getting into environmental intelligence and sustainability. And IBM's offerings in these spaces is incredible, right? You've got brilliant people, brilliant assets coming out of IBM research. But over the years, my true passion was for a product called IBM Food Trust, which was incubated within Big Blue, right? It was one of the startups that was created within IBM at a time when IBM was making big investment into the blockchain space. And this was a use case where, using blockchain, everyone in the food supply chain could upload their data and have it shared in a trusted way. And it was an incredible run over the past 6 years of building this business based on return on investment, right? There were no mandates in place. There was no requirement for traceability, but companies that could see the benefit of being able to trace every unit of products really invested and saw incredible gains, incredible returns on that investment. Now, specifically for listeners that aren't as familiar with traceability, just an explanation of what traceability is, we're talking about the digital flow of information, of data, to reflect the physical flow of products. Now, this happens quite a bit today already, right? And if I were a supplier and I was shipping romaine lettuce to Steve manufacturing plant or Steve retail location, Steve grocery, I would ship that product to you. I'd let you know somehow digitally that I'm shipping you 20 pounds of romaine lettuce. You would pay me for 20 pounds of romaine lettuce, and we're all good. Now, that scenario is not actually traceability because at the end of the day, we don't know which lettuce you received. We don't know which lettuce was shipped. And that could have been 5 lots of lettuce. It could have been 1 lot of lettuce. Again, we don't know what lettuce it was, which is really important if there's a recall or a situation where you need to identify where your products flow. So in a recall scenario, for example, if we have someone that got sick from that lettuce, we don't know where the lettuce came from, and we don't know where other bad lettuce may have gone. So at the end of the day, we have to throw out all of the lettuce. We lose all the opportunity to have sold and earn a margin on that lettuce. So your store is affected, my store has to pay for the recall, and then consumers are concerned because they might not be willing to go buy lettuce because we didn't know where the bad lettuce was in the first place. How are we going to know that the lettuce on shelves today is actually safe? So there's an erosion of consumer trust. Now, traceability is the idea that you can trace every single unit of product as it flows through the supply chain. So if you have a single carton or clamshell of lettuce, we actually know where it came from. And if there's a bad situation like E. coli or Listeria, we know exactly where that bad product would have gone. So that's the foundation of traceability, and that's one of the benefits of traceability. We saw benefits in food safety. We saw benefits of reducing food fraud. We saw benefits of supply chain efficiency, where you could drive more efficiency with your logistics, your forecasting, or demand forecast for different products. And then finally, the most exciting part is the consumer engagement. Right now, with the story of every single unit as it flows through the supply chain, you can tell the story of where your product came from. Right? Where did the beans in my cup of coffee actually come from, as opposed to some generic marketing story that would say this is where they might have come from, right? And as you sip that coffee, you actually get the gratification of knowing what farm or what co-op they actually came from. So you can really tell a compelling story. This helps with marketing teams. It helps build a brand that is sustainable, right? That actually adheres to the values that these brands are claiming and backs it up with real data. So we built IBM Food Trust on a foundation of this return on investment, 6 years, and we built what became the largest blockchain-based traceability network in the world. Now, that's a wonderful claim, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm proud of what we built, but traceability still has yet to be widely adopted. It's difficult to put labels on every single unit of products, right? It's difficult to scan those labels every time they come through a distribution center or through a grocery store, right? Or through a manufacturing plant. And I will do a shout out to Wiggs, right? There are technologies that are making that a lot easier, like IoT or ambient IoT tags that can automate that process. But it takes investment and it's difficult to do. Now, the landscape in 2022 in January fundamentally changed when the FDA finalized the Food Safety Modernization Act Rule 204D, the FSMA food traceability rule. So officially, it went into federal law that all food companies have to now trace their products. And if they don't trace their products, they're subject to criminal and civil penalties, right? It's actually a law that has teeth, right? And companies need to adhere to it. Not only that, it affects companies internationally that ship products to the US. So if you have a product that is on the affected list, then you could have your imports blocked at the border. So this really does pose a risk to food companies. So the landscape has changed fundamentally, and we're looking at a dramatic surge in demand for traceability capabilities, traceability technology. Many of the companies out there are well positioned to do really well to support food businesses on this journey. And the exciting thing is, once you have all this traceability data, you can generate such a stronger return on investment for your businesses. So faster recalls, the FDA can do their jobs better, we can save lives, we can reduce the impact of foodborne illness. And we both know there have been huge articles, right? Huge recalls, very prominent in the news recently across deli meats, across butter, eggs, right?
Hamburgers, onions, billions of dollars coming off the valuation of some of the most revered companies in the world. And we've found we don't have the traceability information to know why people are dying, why thousands of people are getting sick, because we don't have the traceability information. And this traceability is something that is a win-win-win for producers, for consumers, for retailers. They can charge more for their products with traceability information. They can waste less if they have the traceability information. And, there's a moral imperative to not kill people with food. And we can just have so much better experience enjoying our food if we know where it's come from. So what is the gap that is stopping us getting to this win-win-win? And how is your company, Starfish, planning to fill it?
Excellent. The gap is traceability requires data to be shared between every company in the supply chain, right? And that's a difficult task, right? Many companies can collect what they do about every product they ship, right? If I'm a distributor, I receive a product, I ship a product, and I need to track which products I receive and I ship. Otherwise, I might be shipping the wrong product to the wrong person, and that's an issue. But I need to also, with this federal law, share that data with the people that I ship it to. So on a daily basis, I ship to different people, and it's an evolving landscape, right? And it's very difficult to share that data in a trusted way, right? And so I need to share what I do with each item, but I don't want to share what I do with the other items, right? Because if I ship to 10 different grocery stores, every grocery store should not see what I ship to the other grocery stores because they compete with one another. So this data sharing is imperative for traceability to work, but data sharing in a trusted way is really difficult because you need to identify every product as it's shared. So Starfish is meant to address this challenge, right? Meant to address this gap where data exists in many siloed, disparate systems. It's a very fragmented marketplace, but Starfish is a platform that simplifies this data sharing across the food supply chain, acting as a universal foundation for seamless integration, right? And it's not just seamless integration, it's a trusted integration where only the right data flows to the right person, right? It's a very sophisticated piece of technology that does a very simple thing, right? It gives the data to the right people at the right time so that they can be compliant with the federal law, but also see a return on investment of traceability data, understand what happened to their products at different locations through the supply chain. So on the technical side, we actually provide intelligent connectors that translate data from these disparate systems into the standardized GS1 protocol, which ensures this consistent and secure communication between all supply chain partners, no matter what their existing technology is.
And so GS1, this is the standards body that we've featured. We've had representatives on the podcast, but for people that are not aware, these are the people that basically define the standards for all of the barcodes that you see on every product that you're buying. What is the standard of theirs that you're using specifically?
So GS1 has a standard called EPCIS, and EPCIS is essentially a way to identify these critical tracking events when they happen in the supply chain. So when we tell the story of the product and we do traceability, it really is telling a story, right? When was a product harvested, right, from the original ingredients? When were they shipped downstream? And when were they received? When were they transformed? Maybe multiple ingredients into a certain final good, and that final good was shipped to a place where it was sold or consumed or served, right, in a restaurant. So the story of the who, what, why, where, when is the key data elements that fills into this story. And the GS1 EPCIS standard is actually fully compatible with the federal law. And the FDA laid out a standard of critical tracking events and key data elements to tell this story of every product as it flows through the supply chain.
How is this different to what's out there today? Because EDI has been around for donkey's years. There's advanced shipping notices, there's bill of lading, all that sort of malarkey. How does this relate to all of that?
Yeah, it's complementary, but it is unique and independent, right? So what's traditionally been shared, and I mentioned this earlier, is the information necessary to track inventory and identify when payment should be issued, right? EDI allows for companies to get paid for the products that they ship. And bill of ladings, right? Show kind of the contents, right? And the actual additional information about what's in these packages and how they flow through the supply chain. traceability data shows certain events at different points in time that fill in the gaps, right? You may know that you ultimately received a product, and when a product is received at a restaurant, you pull out the sheet and you tick off the boxes, say I received X, Y, and Z, and we're good, and you throw out the piece of paper and you issue payment, right? And that's what a lot of these existing systems are designed to do, which is facilitate the business transactions, the actual money exchange, the inventory tracking. Traceability is one step further, right? Which tells the where, the when, and the how of what's happening through the supply chain. And this is beyond the four walls of your company, right? So, typical visibility is just transactional documents and transactional data with partners that is relevant only to your company, right? And in some cases, traceability data can show the full chain of custody or the full history of a product as it flows.
So who are you targeting as customers? Who are your customers? What's the persona?
Yeah, so this is a really unique thing about Starfish that differentiates us in this marketplace. And this is a realization of 6.5 years of lessons learned with IBM Food Trust, being a traceability software vendor in the market. And that learning is there are incredible vendors out there that specialize in many different parts of the industry. However, those vendors are having a very hard time sharing data between platforms. And if I have, let's say, a retailer like a Walmart using something like IBM Food Trust, and Walmart has suppliers that are using another supplier or another technology system, if Food Trust is not connecting to every one of those individual systems, then there's no way to actually share that data. So there's a huge gap in the industry from a data sharing perspective where the existing solutions are not currently sharing that necessary data that is required by federal law, but also required to realize the return on investment that these companies can realize from traceability data. Now, the two primary reasons I think this is happening is, number one, in some cases, these solution providers compete with one another. So it's not actually in their interest to share data with a competitor that might see additional value or provide better value to a competing solution. The second reason, which is a stronger reason, is there are disparate systems that are very complex. There are some legacy systems, and there's a lot of inconsistency in the market. Even EDI, which is a very well-known and well-adopted standard, has so much disparity in the type of messages, this formatting of the messages, right? ERP systems are very, very inconsistent. They add quite a bit of value in a company's operations, but these enterprise resource planning solutions don't always treat data in the same way. So the difficulty of sharing data isn't possible in a trusted way unless all that data is normalized to a consistent format. So Starfish's approach is actually to serve the technology businesses of the industry, right? And in order to do that in a trusted way, we are completely neutral, right? Our goal is to serve them. We will never compete with their business, right? We will never take any business away from them. Our customers are these technology businesses where I believe I can add quite a bit of value through Starfish to these businesses to say, today, they can't share data with all of the supply chain partners. With Starfish, they'll be able to tap into the entire network, regardless of what solution other trading partners of these food companies use. So this solution provider that we serve now can tell their customers, hey, we can connect you with everyone because we use Starfish, right? And by connecting them with everyone, they can provide their customers a better service. They can add this traceability data to other auxiliary services like product quality assessments, like inventory management and other types of inventory optimization that they offer to their end food companies. So Starfish is being treated as an embedded microservice. We're just a small piece on the back end that provides trusted data sharing and trusted data processing. The data processing is something that we learned how to do over the course of 6 years and has been tested and validated by a lot of the largest food companies in the world, including Walmart, Carrefour, Nestle, and others. And this is the system that we're looking to provide. And fortunately, we talked a little bit about the decision to leave IBM. IBM is supportive of this concept, right? We bring value to IBM Food Trust, just like we bring value to every other solution provider in the industry. So we have the support, and we've signed an official partnership with IBM that's helping support our credibility of the service that we're providing to the industry.
Congratulations. That's pretty amazing. Quite an achievement to kick things off with. So how would you distinguish what you do relative to IBM Food Trust, which I think, the promise was always it's blockchain, it's EPCIS, and therefore it's interoperability. And I could say the same thing about the folks at Trustwell with Food Logic. Is it? And feel free to set me straight here, but it seems almost like those platforms, in order to provide value, started doing more and more within the domain of the customer, the grocery company or the OEM. And in a way, what you're doing is less, and you're just kind of doing more of the connector rather than the enterprise application piece that, they were big companies and they needed to add a lot of value. And so they ended up sort of having all this extra stuff, which then made it harder for them to do the interoperability stuff. Is that a fair observation? Or if not, tell me where I got it wrong.
It's very fair. Yeah, it's spot on. And we're providing a service for a niche in the industry, very similar to the food safety world. Traceability is important, but it's just one part of the puzzle, right? Companies like Trustwell, like iTrade, these companies have very diverse sets of services and value that they bring their customers, right? And they serve their customers on a wide range of fronts. Traceability is one of those fronts. And building complex, difficult to maintain connectors is not really going to be a focus or a core focus of these companies because they have so many other ways to add value to their customers, right? They have other focal areas. So a part of this is Starfish taking on a very difficult task for these companies that they don't really need to do, and that they would all build themselves point-to-point connections that would be the same connectors as all of their competitors. So investing in this area is not really strategic for any of these businesses, where the service we can provide can be embedded just a piece of their offering and feed data into additional value add they can offer their customers.
So it sounds like you're going to be selling with those companies, or maybe not even in the conversation. Maybe do you see yourself selling with them, or do you see yourself sort of in the background just helping them deploy a FSMA 204, the Food Safety Modernization Act 204, traceability, and just being able to have the Lego blocks that everyone's using so that they can snap and click these things together?
Yeah, we're happy to be in the background, right? We are happy to support. There is a scenario where I have a lot of partners that have already signed on, and I would like to help advertise their services. So if food companies come to me, again, I have a commitment not to compete with the existing providers of the industry, but I can provide referrals, I can provide connections to whoever's best suited to meet their needs. So, for example, in the seafood space, there are a host of seafood traceability providers that might be a good fit for a certain customer that processes seafood, and I can help facilitate that connection and help that end food company get what they need in the most efficient way possible. So I do hope to help improve the visibility and awareness of these solution providers as a part of the service and partnership that we're forming with them.
And I guess the reality is that supply chains are enormous networks that stretch all the way upstream, all the way downstream from the manufacturer to the consumer. And so there tend to be very few companies that dominate end to end. And there's different size. If you're a small farmer, you're probably going to be using something different to a massive producer of berries that's in every supermarket. So size, where you are in the supply chain, the different kinds of products, there's going to be a lot of diversity. I'd like you to comment on that. And also what the other thing I want to move on to is kind of the use cases that you're prioritizing. From a Wiliot perspective, my dream is that we can see a cold chain and look at temperature over time for lettuce and fruit so that we can move beyond the 19th, 20th century use by, best by dates and have something that's dynamic and can really help us reduce waste. But that's slightly different to FSMA 204, where temperature doesn't even come into it. It's really just the matter of having a lot code that is shared uniformly up and down. So how are you sequencing these, and are you going to try and do all of them, or just a few of these use cases?
Yeah. So initially, the main focus of Starfish is supporting FSMA 204, right? Companies have a little over a year to become compliant with this rule, and we're going on the third year of the allocated time for companies to become compliant. Many need this service; they need to accelerate, and it's going to be a key focus of the industry over the next year to help companies get there. Now, the benefit is traceability data and traceability data sharing provides a trusted foundation for sharing of additional data attributes that can be really valuable. So you mentioned temperature data, right? There is also sustainability data, right? Product carbon footprint, right? In many cases, scope 3 emissions, right? The emissions of a company's supply chain partners is relatively unknown. And it's very difficult to collect because companies may not have a trusted way of sharing that at scale. They may not have a trusted way of calculating what the actual impact is. Mass balance, right, is not a standardized calculation methodology. And again, I'm happy to speak on more of these terms, and I apologize to use all these terms, but there's a lot of unknown in what should be coming from primary data. Now, with this foundation of traceability data that shows where a product flows and an entitlement system that allows for data to be shared for every item that flows through the supply chain, we actually have a foundation where data can be shared in a trusted way without sharing too much data, right? And that's a key aspect, right? Is even with temperature data, you don't want to share temperature data for products that are not shipped to these parties, right? So the benefit is Starfish is building an engine that provides trusted entitlements, right? Who should have what data? And once we have this foundation built, we start expanding to use cases where temperature is very valuable to identify a potential product degradation curve, right? How does a product degrade over time? And when would it be, as you mentioned, unusable, right? Now, if we have traceability data and we know that a product sat in a warehouse for 5 days or has been sitting in a warehouse for 5 days, we can actually identify and calculate automatically dwell time limits within certain facilities or certain nodes of a supply chain to say this product should only ever be in this facility for a maximum of 3 days. Otherwise, when it reaches a grocery store shelf, it will only have 15 hours to be sold before it might go bad. And it'll last less long on a consumer's shelves, right? Or in a consumer's refrigerator. So understanding that for dynamic supply chain product allocations and alerts can be extremely valuable, not only combining the history of the product, right? If we know exactly when it was harvested, exactly when it was cooled and packed and shipped, we know the entire life of the product. We have that as a foundation. We can also combine that with temperature, with humidity, with vibrations, right? And interesting enough, vibrations is a leading degradation impact, right? The actual vibrations of the crate, right, on the truck can actually lead to higher degradation in some cases than other factors that folks might expect. So that's a really exciting thing, and that's huge because that helps us reduce food waste by spoilage, right? It helps reduce food waste by expiration or food waste by products not being able to be sold on shelves, right? Which is a real positive impact for our supply chains.
Are you just going to be dealing with APIs, or do you envisage providing a dashboard, which is kind of like the access control permissions list for each of the players, so that a Walmart could say, well, this is the information I want to share back upstream, because the data can potentially go two ways, right? It can go downstream and it potentially could go upstream. Do you envisage providing a dashboard for people, and do you envisage providing data upstream and downstream?
Yeah, there are a few different experiences, right, from a user interface that will facilitate, right? So one is actually because we serve the solution providers of the industry, we can actually provide embeddable views, right? If a customer wants a FSMA report generator, we can go ahead and just give them what's called an iframe and have them insert that into their experience, and that makes it easy for them to present a capability backed by Starfish, but presented and white label it as their own, right? And so there are quite a few different experiences that will facilitate on that front, all embedded to support our technology partners. And in some cases, those will get down to the end user. In some cases, that may down the road include, let's say, a consumer application where you scan a QR code and you see the story of your product. And again, that's a really fun experience. Now,
Yeah.
on the technical side, we will be building dashboards that include a very sophisticated view of all of the entitlements that have been granted and a full auditable history of every data element. Because if you're sharing your data, again, you need to know that it's handled in a trusted way, that it's not being shared with the wrong people. So you should be able to view all of the data you have for every product and understand where it came from, where it was processed, where it's been shared, and understand everything that's happening to your data. So a full audit history of every data element that's been processed in the system, an analysis of those data elements, and even using modern tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning to identify potential instances of data that could be wrong, that could be inaccurate, identifying anomalies, right? If someone accidentally entered 3 extra zeros into the system, or they leaned on the computer keyboard and had a few extra characters in there, our system will be able to help other companies identify instances of bad quality data, which is really important to making this useful.
So what data will you be storing and what data will you just be passing up and down?
Most of the data we process is passed up and down. So security is a really key aspect of what we're doing, and it's paramount to our success. My team will never be able to see any company's data, right? We don't even have the ability to see the data. The system processes the data automatically. Every company that participates in the system and every company through their solution provider controls their data, right? They own the data and they control how the data is shared. In some cases, we can even create custom rules on how data should be shared and create restrictions or really handle data exactly as they see fit. So again, the data has no visibility. It's all flowing directly through the system to the other partners. But on the back end, to automate all of the entitlements, you do need to store information on where the data should be going, right? So the system itself actually processes what we call an entitlement map that shows who should have the data when and where should the data be shared. And that's really important to creating automated data sharing. That's a huge efficiency as opposed to someone going in and saying, I'm going to share each data element one at a time to each of these different supply chain trading partners.
Okay, so you won't have the data about a given punnet of strawberries in a Sprouts, but you would have the access control metadata that describes the flow of the data and who's allowed to see what and what data should be shared.
Yeah, yeah. At a simple level, it's almost like a handshake, right? When we have someone that ships a product to someone else, right, that creates a handshake to allow for the data to flow, right, as it should. And when someone receives a product from someone upstream, that allows data to flow to that trading partner. And all of this feeds into what's required by the FDA to track products and will be fed into the FDA when there's a recall to accelerate and really improve upon their ability to identify what products are bad, what products are good, and what products should be removed from shelves. So the future that we're seeing here is such an efficient way to handle recalls that many of these drawn out recalls that get people sick over weeks or months are reduced to hopefully just a couple of days.
Is what you're producing, could it be seen as an optional alternative to EDI?
Hopefully a complement to EDI, but the two systems do work together. Now, we're integrated with EDI providers as well, right? And in some cases, we have key players in the industry like Kroger that have sent out Dear Supplier letters stating that they would like data to flow into their systems for all products, not just the FDA required products. And that data should be flowing in EDI format. Now, that's a bit of a difficult ask for any customers that are not using EDI format. So part of the value that Starfish provides is actually taking data from all of these different ERP systems, GS1, EPCIS systems, spreadsheets, wherever it comes from, and we can actually handle that data translation into the EDI format. So I do view Starfish as complementary to EDI and hopefully feeding into support for customers like Kroger that have invested quite a bit in maintaining an EDI system and making sure that it's meeting all of their business needs.
And how does Starfish position versus a technology like blockchain? You've been in the business of selling blockchain for years. I'm
Yeah.
interested in this.
Yeah. So thank you for the question. It's one that I've been on a personal learning journey over the past 6 years. I'll start by saying I think blockchain is a pretty incredible technology, right? It provides a very secure way to share and process data and can be very efficient and scalable. Now, some of the lessons we learned with blockchain in the food space were a difficult reality that blockchain, to be secure, data has to be submitted directly to a blockchain ledger. And the best way to do that is actually to have food companies hosting their own nodes, right? Their own trust anchors that would process and provide that security, right? This distributed ledger should be distributed among many trusted parties in the industry. Now, that's not something that food companies have the technology resources nor the margins to justify. And in many cases, food companies need to focus on their operations. They need to focus on things outside of using this fancy, somewhat complicated technology that takes a lot of time to maintain and maintain, data records within. So the lesson learned in simple terms is that the food industry today does not have the margins nor the resources to justify the use of blockchain, despite honoring and supporting the use of IBM Food Trust's use of blockchain, right? That's wonderful. And once the data is on that platform, I believe it is very secure. But we've made the decision with Starfish not to use blockchain because we don't think the industry is ready for it today. Maybe someday we'll get there, and I think that would be wonderful to get there, but we can still handle data sharing in a very secure way. Some of the new standards like post-quantum cryptography are examples of ways that even new systems can adhere to cryptographic hashing of data in a secure way without needing to use blockchain, but also still adhering to the best practice for data security that's publicly available.
Okay, well answered, and I really endorse your strategy there. What about data carriers? So there's lots of different data carriers. There's legacy barcodes. There's 4D data matrix barcodes. There's RFID, and of course there's Bluetooth ambient IoT, and then coming in the future, there's going to be Wi-Fi ambient IoT, battery-free stickers that talk directly to the radios that are in all of the Cisco access points. And also, in a couple of years, there's going to be 5G advanced ambient IoT stickers that are talking to the cellular radios that are in the telematics units in trailers and trucks and 5G, private 5G networks and all of that stuff. So I'm sure people's eyes are rolling with all of that. But what's your strategy with regard to data carriers?
I think it's all wonderful, right? It's all the future of the industry, right? As long as it's done in a cost-efficient way, right? These can drive insane efficiencies in how we collect data, how we share data.
Less labor, better visibility, more data sharing,
Exactly.
but also kind of you've got your Heinz alphabetic soup of technologies to worry about.
That's right. That's right. And the biggest fear is, that none of the data speaks to one another, right? That it's all different data formats, different standards. I'm a real believer in the standards bodies of the industry, right? GS1 is setting a gold standard of how this data should be processed, how it should be handled. They're actively evaluating, working with these technology companies, and I think if they're successful, then we'll find a way to use this data across all different companies. If we're unsuccessful, then we'll have a whole bunch of technology that just doesn't add a whole lot of value because it's all too disparate, right? And I think it's a risk of going down that path, right? Depending on how this technology is built. But if we're successful, then this will drive amazing benefits to our supply chain, right? By identifying products and where the products are, and better prediction of inventory, better allocation of inventory, getting products to where they need to be at the right time, to be of maximum benefit to you or I, right? The average consumer that needs a meal, that needs something to eat, or wants something that they'd like to purchase. So I'm very optimistic. I'm very excited, and I think the standards bodies of the industry are actually doing incredible work on this front very actively to get us in the right direction.
Very good. Well, just a few words on my perspective on this. I think that the ambient Internet of Things, essentially the next generation of RFID, radio frequency identifiers, that are using the inexpensive radios that are already everywhere around us, the Wi-Fi, the cellular, the Bluetooth, as an alternative to big, expensive radios that have limited presence. These next generation radios, they're everywhere. They're in people's homes, their washing machines, their fridges, they're in trucks and trailers. And so, I think companies like the company I work for a day job, our job is to use the GS1 standards to interface with serial GTINs and have the ability to associate traceability lot codes that conform to the FDA's requirements. So that's kind of our job. And then it sounds like your job is to make sure that the metadata, the data about the products, is passed around. So if we can provide lower cost, more reliable, more automated ways of sharing the data that's associated with fish and strawberries and meat, what we need is companies like yours that are going to share the metadata that can allow end-to-end visibility so that consumers can look all the way upstream and see what farm, even what field something came from. And the manufacturers can start to look downstream and do a better job of supporting the retailers, and in some cases even explore new business models where consumers are buying directly from manufacturers. But in my mind, what we're doing is sort of orthogonal to what you're doing, or to use less of pretentious words. All of those data carriers I mentioned should work with all of the GS1 standards that you're talking about. I do want to ask you one nerdy question about EPCIS 2.0. Is that something that you're supporting? So that's sort of, there's EPCIS, which the original season 1, the version 1, which is what I think IBM Food Trust is using, and then there's other vendors that are using EPCIS 2.0. What are you going to be supporting?
Yeah. We'll support. We'll focus on EPCIS 2.0. Again, use of JSON is where the industry is heading, and I think they're great complements. The interesting thing is, in this industry, right, where we have fragmented systems, 200 different solution providers, different data standards, even folks that use GS1 that might be on GS1 EPCIS 1.0, right, using XML data, right, might not actually be able to speak as well with someone using EPCIS 2.0. So some of the gaps that we see, even for folks that are using the data standard, were surprising initially to me that they existed, right? If someone's using the standard, then it should be easy to have data flowing. But that's another gap that Starfish can help provide and help address. So, many of the data fields overlap, right? Certainly there are quite a few enhancements that GS1 made with EPCIS 2.0. So we will be supporting the latest and greatest standards, even GDST 1.2. So these standards work very well together, and I think it's important to be on the latest and support the latest as far as the standard that we normalize data to, but also be able to ingest anyone using any legacy versions of these standards as well.
I've got to compliment you on your branding. This Starfish name is great, because I think anyone who's listened this far, and we've been talking for almost an hour now, not quite, but it's like, oh my God, it's a headache getting all this stuff to talk to each other. And if you can build a brand and you've got a great name that basically says, doesn't really matter if it's Starfish, if it works with Starfish, if it's powered by Starfish, then we can make it all talk to each other. And that's the secret to lower insurance, lower waste, more safety. And, we're neutral, and you can trust us. We're going to make it all talk together. I think that's your kind of branding opportunity.
Yeah. And the Starfish name it was always kind of a fun allusion to the fact that, we will have connectors, right, to everyone coming into a shared place. But starfish are incredible animals, right? If they lose a leg, right, that leg grows right back, right? And that's kind of a beautiful analogy to the dynamic style of network and connectivity mesh that we're hoping to provide.
Well, it's a brilliant idea, and I can't think of anyone in the industry that's better equipped to make it work than you, because you're so well connected after all these years at IBM. You've had an inside out view of IBM, one of the greatest technology corporations in history, and you've seen what they did to solve this problem. And you've got a chance to kind of move in a very nimble, agile way to use that knowledge. If we look at you as CEO, how's it going?
It's going really well so far. We've just wrapped up our first month and a week, and it's really been amazing to see the response of the industry. Right, when you launch something like this, you never know how it's going to go, and already solidifying partnerships with folks like GS1, like IBM, like the IFMA Food Away from Home Association. We'll be speaking at the Produce Supply Organization. We presented at the California Academy of Science. It's just been an absolutely incredible month, and incredible response from a lot of folks that, you form a hypothesis and you don't know whether the hypothesis is going to work out or not until you really test the theory. And as we've approached these partners that I'm hoping to bring value to, the response has been incredibly positive. So we're very, very excited about what we can accomplish. We're just getting started, and there's a whole lot more to do. But thanks for asking. It's been going really well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've got you've got a great founding team, and you've got some early investment that will allow you to actually realize a lot of this vision. So well done on that too.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Wiggs, this is not your first rodeo on the Mr. Beacon podcast. So you've already had the music questions once, but I just like talking about music, so I'm going to ask you about them again. Did your choice of 3 meaningful songs change, or are they the same as they were last time I spoke to you?
So I love this question, and it has such depth and meaning, and it forces you to reflect on what songs you're excited about. So I'm going to share the 3 that have meaning to me right now.
Because it changes, right?
It changes very often. Yeah. And it's been interesting. I tell you what, with the new startup life that I'm leading, you need some good songs to support you to really get the mood high. So there's one song that I absolutely love, and this is a song that I can never be sad listening to. It's "Give It Up" by Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Oh, I love that.
It's
retro.
When it comes on, you just can't be sad. You can't be upset. It's hard not to dance.
Every entrepreneur needs a high energy pick me up song.
That's right.
And, I sometimes have. It's normally for me. It's like Queen, "We Will Rock You" or something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes you need the high energy. Yeah. And then the complement to that is the lower energy, but the gratitude song, right? So we've got a little Van Morrison, "Days Like This," when you're thinking, hey, this is a good day. Things are going really well, and I got to take a moment and be grateful. And that's kind of what Van Morrison does for me. These are classic songs, but they have a lot of depth, a lot of meaning, and it's a beautiful one.
So true. So what are like some of the things you're grateful for?
Oh, right now, there's so much. I genuinely, to have the opportunity to start a business that you're passionate about, you're motivated about, to have a team that you really trust and that you can work really well with, and to be pursuing your dream, I think is something that's really special and rare. And I'm blown away that I have the opportunity to do that. So some days are tough, right? When you compare a career at IBM versus a career at a startup, it's higher highs and lower lows, and you have tough days and you have good days. And on the good days, you really need to take a moment to be grateful that you have even the opportunity to have the pursuit of this passion. So
well, yeah, and you've chosen each other, and you're in it together, and you're doing something big, and that's great that you feel that way. What else is on your gratitude list?
The last one is also a grateful one, but also brings me back to my roots. It's not a song that was written by Ben Rector, but I am a fan of Ben Rector's, and he was on my list last time. He's the only repeat, but he did a cover of a song called "It's a Great Day to Be Alive," and this is less sentimental gratitude, more just back to the basics, right? When we were working in the food space and you're appreciating where your food comes from, the effort that goes into farming, harvesting the products that we eat, it's incredible what they do, what they do to produce the food that we depend on, that we eat every single day, right? And it's this song. It's a great day to be alive. Really brings you back to your roots, and it's good to be grateful for just the simple things, right? Like a good meal on your plate, a good drink, all those
Yeah.
good elements.
I mean, this is such an interesting theme because, I think a good life is all about savoring and appreciating. And, when you work on food, then it does give you this focus to focus on something that you have to do, you have to eat. But if you can enjoy eating, and it's a bit like this podcast. I love listening to other people's podcasts, and this is so niche. It's probably one of the most niche podcasts you can imagine. It is in the top 1% podcast, but I don't think it's at the top of the top 1% because it's so niche. But just doing this and having great conversations like this make me appreciate, the Terry Gross, the other amazing interviewers that are kind of more mainstream. And it's a bit like our music question. You do your best with music. I can't play, but I try occasionally. And it just makes me really appreciate the people that can. So, well, Wiggs, thanks for humoring me with this rather odd set of questions for someone in the IoT business, but I really enjoyed hearing your answers.
Of course. Yeah, I love the question. It's great.
Time is the most valuable thing we have. I want to make sure that I've taken a lot of it, but I think it was really worth hearing about what I think is a really extremely promising company that's doing something very important. It's a huge opportunity. It's a big problem. The timing is great. Being too early is the same as being wrong. And being too late means that you're not even in the race. So I think your timing's really great, and you've got some great people and a great focus. So congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on, Steve. This has been wonderful.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast here on YouTube. You can listen to this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please like and share this video. And be sure to subscribe for more videos. For more information about Wiliot, Ambient IoT, and IoT Pixels, head over to wiliot.com.